Thank you for joining me again, second year in a row, Mr. Jan Andrew Henderson.
Well, I had such a nice time last time, I had to come back.
You know what, it's got nothing to do with the fact that you've got a new book coming out.
Well, it has a little to do with the fact that I have a new book coming out, which is called Let's Write a Page Turner, the Ultimate Instruction Manual for Writers.
So, what made you go into that? What made you want to write a non-fiction book?
I've actually written several non-fiction books, but they're normally history.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're not how to write books or writer instructional books.
No.
No.
The last few years I've been an editor, and I specialise in developmental and copy editing.
Beautiful.
And I realised that two things. One is that everyone knows there are specific steps when you're writing a story. I won't say novel, just a story.
Yeah.
There are specific steps. But people are actually quite unclear as to how it works. And all of the books that I had read on how you write, some of them very worthy, but none of them were some of them were really airy-fairy, and there was vague concepts, or they told you stuff that any idiot knows anyway. And I thought, I can't find one where it's just step by step, this is what you do. And that's the whole pitch of the book. It's not our guide, it's an instruction manual.
Yeah.
And just as you would if you were building a wardrobe from IKEA, you open it up and you do this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and you've got your novel at the end. And that's half of it.
Yeah.
And the other half is that every single person I edit makes exactly the same mistakes.
Oh, please. What are those mistakes?
There are lots of them.
Okay, what are some of the big ones?
There's two categories. Again, there's the sort of general mistakes that people make, and then there's the very specific ones as well. So I want to cover both of those. My favourite is repetition.
Yeah.
Same words and phrases over and over and over. It's so easy to fix.
Sorry, we've just come into Devon Pixies right at the very end of their day, so they'll finish their clean-up soon.
Someone's going to shout, 2 egg and chips! Any minute.
I'll get a long black, full cream milk.
So yes, that's basically, so what the book pretty much does, it's a step-by-step manual on how you write a story, along with all the things that you shouldn't do when you're writing a story, and then just for extra icing on the cake, since we're in a tea room, I have to use that analogy. I put in a few tips and hints that I just don't see anybody else using.
Yeah.
And I hope that that'll sort of differentiate what you do from what other writers do.
Oh.
And that's it in a nutshell.
It sounds like the manual we need, to be honest, because I find that a lot of the writer manuals it's nearly like they don't have on-the-ground experience, and they're writing something that they think might be right, or they think might be applicable. But it sounds like you've worked out the nuts and bolts of what's actually going on.
To some extent, yeah. And also, I mean, you get fantastic advice, and I include this in the book, you get fantastic advice from certain writers. But also you get even established, best-selling authors will waffle. News and stuff like that. Nobody knows what the themes. It's too vague.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get away from all that.
Yeah.
And just make something really, really concrete.
Beautiful. When is that one coming out?
I don't know.
Okay. Is there a month that you're expecting it to come out?
I got the cover today. I've seen the cover today. So the release date is probably going to be right at the beginning of June.
Beautiful.
I would imagine. In time.
Fingers crossed for the Writers' Festival.
I will definitely have it out by then.
Oh, wonderful. That's what I'm looking forward to. I'll definitely get a copy at the festival, because that sort of stuff, again, when you've got, because you've written prolifically, you have quite a few books out.
This is book number 40.
40. 40.
Yes.
oh my God. People look at me and they're like, oh, 10 books? That's a lot. And I'm like, it felt like a lot, but it doesn't feel like a lot. And then you've got here with 40. You are a prolific writer.
I'm not saying they're all good books. But
no, but
they exist.
You've got to start somewhere. I find that, I was just telling you before, I'm redoing my first book, re-editing it and adding in a prologue because it wasn't at the standard that I needed it to be at. And that trajectory just goes up with every single book you write. With every book you write, you should be getting better. You should be improving on something every time you do a new chapter. Every time you step out and continue to write, you should be improving. So with 40 books, you've got experience under your belt in order to write this.
I hope so, yes.
Yes.
I wouldn't have written it if I hadn't become an editor. But it's the editing aspect of it. It's like you just, because you're not writing it and getting wrapped up in the story, and because you're not reading it for enjoyment, although it's good if you do enjoy it, you're reading it to pick it apart, and it puts a different perspective on everything. And you think, and I find myself just in the advice I was giving, just always saying the same thing over and over again. So I may as well write this down.
My editor, when I go through all of her edits, it's comma, 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 comma. But because the program she edits with, we use Google Sheets, and her stuff comes up as suggestions, it's got quotation marks around it. So I'm like, oh, I've buggered up the commas in the quotation marks again. Like, I've buggered up the commas in the speech again. God damn it. But no, it's just general commas. And I think that sometimes an author doesn't need that cluttering their mind, and it also gives the editors something to do. So you don't need to be perfect with your commas, but reading this will help you with your commas. Reading this will help you with your repetition. And I think just improving with every book you write is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think it's essential that you change when you're writing as well.
Yes.
You can't just write the same thing over, sorry Stephen King, over
any romance writer.
Anyway, no, I do romance writing, but I can't. But yes, you can't just tell. So you need to, as well as improving your actual writing skills, I think it's essential as well that you begin to experiment and try different, types of writing, different. For instance, my books, I prided myself when I started that I could write complex plots that nobody had ever seen before. And it wasn't that I ran out of ideas for them, but I just found myself, as the books went on, stopping and starting to think, what's the simplest situation I can come up with, and write a book about that. So I think experimentation is great. But basically, a story is built the same way, no matter what type of story you're in, and that's what I'm trying to get over to people.
There is definitely there's waves. It's like writing music. You have verse, chorus, verse, finale, and then maybe chorus again. But there's always patterns, and people like patterns. Humans like patterns. You look at any kind of autistic brain and they're like, oh my God, a pattern. I love this. This makes me feel safe and comfortable because I know what's happening. Throughout all of history, people have searched for patterns. It's why we have horoscopes. It's why we have seasons. It's why we have people predicting tides and weather maps. It's the exact same with art. Having a pattern makes people happy.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean you can't play with that pattern.
There are all sorts of patterns, all sorts of patterns.
There's patterns everywhere.
Oh, we're getting into themes now. Stuff.
I was just reading the Junji Ito, the horror, it's really psychological, twisted horror manga artist from Japan. He's renowned. The very first story in this book that got lent to me is this guy who's obsessed with spirals. So it's like, ooh, the spirals, the patterns are everywhere. Oh my gosh. So, you haven't been writing much lately.
Not a huge amount. What I've done is, I spent last year editing.
Yes.
And I edited 3 books of horror stories.
Is that the genre you prefer to be editing?
No, this was actually editing, as in I collected short stories from authors across the world and actually put them together into 3 anthologies called That Is So Wrong, That Is Too Wrong, and That Is All Wrong.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic.
It was good. I got some big names, actually, some quite sort of well-respected writers. And I'd only meant to bring out 1 volume. And I got 800 entries when I put out a call. So
honestly,
easily enough for 3 volumes. So I did that, and then this year I'm actually writing horror stories for children. 1 book in conjunction with the author Claire Fitzpatrick.
Yes, she's also a regular. She's been to every single writers' festival. She's been. She was a speaker at all 3, and Jan and Claire will be speaking in June, July together.
Yes, we will. Over each other.
I'll have to be the adjudicator.
And the thing is, I've got a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old child. So, and I've been writing, I test out the horror stories on that. Then, I call my children
Excellent.
That. On them. And they've got a sort of scale ranging from lame to I am now traumatised.
The best way to traumatise your children with your own stories.
It's great. The last one I read, the 10-year-old said, "That's not appropriate." and the 7-year-old said, I have PTSD. So that's a good one.
All right, that one's great.
So yes, I've done that, and I've also written a sort of superhero novel about 2 children who are 10 and 7, called The Spooky Peoples.
That's adorable.
Who become sort of reluctant superheroes, although they have no talents whatsoever.
They have no superpowers?
They got no superpowers. They depend entirely on their older brother, who's this guy who just locks to his room, but he has a computer that can do anything. So he sends them out to dangerous missions because he wants to kill them, but he hates them. But they always somehow manage to win and come back. Children love that one as well. Is this us? Yes, it is.
That's genius, and I love it, and it's terrible. I feel like that sort of storyline, I don't know how much that gets played with these days. Children are a very taboo thing to touch. You don't, like, in story.
Yes.
You don't touch them in real life, please. But you don't put children in harm's way. You don't traumatise children in this day and age.
No.
But I think in the 90s and in the 90s and early 2000s, that was not so much the case. And prior to that, it was not so much the case. We had TV shows that put kids in, everyone under 18 was in life-threatening situations. They'd be either using giant mecha robots to fight other giant mecha robots. They'd have superpowers. There'd be dark entities. There'd be, I remember Alex Mack. And the Alex Mack books, and all of that sort of stuff. So kids were always in harm's way. And I feel like these days they've really toned it down. It's about, social things, and it's all much softer than it used to be.
I feel very much that I'm walking a fine line. I mean, with older kids it's not so bad, because I don't pay attention to the market. I write young adult novels the way I want to write them, and, I think one of the last ones I wrote, Carnage, started off with 15 teenagers, and by the end of the book only 2 of them were alive. So I don't care.
Well, I mean, The Hunger Games is exactly the same.
But younger kids?
Yeah.
To write horror for younger kids, it's just... And that's why I'm using 10-year-old and 7-year-old, because I'm allowed to do this.
Yeah.
And giving it to them, traumatise them. And they're kind of like, no, you can't do that.
No.
Or you can do this. And I'm using their guidelines, basically, because... They know.
It makes me wonder, though, are your kids harder than other kids because they've been exposed to this?
My son is a complete loose. He's not going to listen to this, so that's fine. My daughter, my daughter has watched all the Annabelle films and all the Conjuring films.
Yeah.
And she's 7 and she doesn't. Smile was the last film she watched, and she loved it. And I'm like, you shouldn't really watch it.
The spooky, ghosty ones, if there was ghosts and demons in ones, I absolutely loved it. But I was terrified of Jurassic Park and Python, but I would love all the spooky, ghosty ones, but if it became a bit too real, or if it became about big monsters, I was like, no, don't want that. It has to be human-sized.
Well, that's the weird thing. That's, when I talk about the fine line with kids, the rules or the supposed rules that apply, they don't really apply because, 7 years old, a few days ago, and I shouldn't be telling you this, especially on camera, but we watched Cocaine Bear. And she loved it, and then she got scared of Super Mario.
What did she get scared of Super Mario?
I don't know, because I refused to go and see it. Not watching Super Mario. But apparently she got scared of Super Mario, but can watch The Conjuring, Cocaine Bear, Stranger Things, all these things, and that's fine. So
I think with ghosty ones, I don't know, maybe it's just a ghosty thing, but with the ghost ones, there's an element of control. They always have something in there that allows you to be protected by from the thing, whether it's a cross, holy water, salt, sigils, spells, like all sorts of things. There's something that you can pretend that you have that keeps you safe from those monsters. But when it comes to Godzilla, or when it comes to, I wonder if she was scared of Bowser or the ghosts, or I really want to find out what part of Mario
I asked her,
scary.
I don't want to talk about it. I said, okay.
Oh, okay. Well, sometimes it's big scary monster around lava, so the entire environment feels really precarious. But yeah, I feel like the ones that have rules when you're a child that you can pretend are applicable to you keeps you safe from those things. But when something can just smash through your house, that's like, what can you do?
Just like I say, it's one of these. William Goldman, the screenwriter who wrote Taxi Driver, he said nobody knows anything.
No.
Nobody knows anything, and that's the best piece of advice you could possibly give any writer. Just do it. If it doesn't work, you'll find out.
Yeah, and if your marketing's really good, you'll find out faster.
Yes, that's true.
If you have a good marketer or a good marketing, you'll fail really fast, and then you can recover faster.
Yeah, and then you just go to the next one.
Yes, exactly. I think the stories definitely need to get told, and I think people nearly deliberately kneecap themselves with that. Writers in particular, but I can't say this because I might upset someone. It's like, well, no, you might not upset anyone. You may not even have it read by anyone. So write the damn thing.
It's an interesting point, because if you're lucky enough to have a traditional publisher, they'll tell you.
Oh yeah.
They'll be like, you can't have that. And if you're doing it yourself, if you're self-publishing, different ballgame.
Yes.
But
you also are in control over the apology and fixing it up and learning from those mistakes directly. You'll never feel gate-kept out of learning those mistakes.
No, just because somebody doesn't like something or finds it offensive, that doesn't mean that everybody will. You get people who are sorry, but take offence at the slightest thing. And
especially the ones that take offence on behalf of other people.
Yes. So do it and worry about the consequences later. That's the motto of my life, actually.
Ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Yes.
Yes. I think that's really bold as a horror writer. I think that when you're doing horror, I find helps unveil the parts of society and ourselves that we don't really understand until it's viscerally there in front of you. And it gives you the truest emotions.
Yes.
So I think it's incredibly fascinating as a genre. And mastering the difference of horror, terror, suspense, and the gamut of those feelings that get branched under fear is something that is really powerful to be able to do.
And setting yourself a challenge as well. That's is sometimes, because one of the pieces of advice you'll get from editors and stuff is don't write for a genre. Don't hem yourself in like that. But actually, sometimes that works.
Yeah.
Because you're basically, if you do it deliberately, you're setting yourself parameters you wouldn't normally set, and you can produce something interesting. I write horrors, and I just do whatever I want. With this new book for little kids, smaller kids, it's like, well, I can't do this, and I can't do. How am I going to scare them without using all the bag of tricks that I have for adults? And that's a real challenge, and that makes it a lot of fun to write, and it makes it, when you get it right, and my kids go, wow, okay, this one's acceptable, but it scared the hell out of us. You're like, yes! So sometimes it is good to just say, I'm going to stay inside this little box.
Yeah, these are the rules and the guidelines I'm setting for myself, And the fun is staying in that challenge.
As long as you're doing it for yourself.
Yes.
Not, I must stick within the little romance box.
No, you've set your
Because
own
the
rules and
market wants
parameters.
that.
No. I think the only time you really do that is if you really enjoy writing that genre specifically. So, and it's something that you need to be prolific in. So, erotica and romance are the two that I think of first when I think of that.
Yeah.
They have very set beats that you have to follow, and normally people are just happier with a longer word count. So if it's over, for erotica, if it's over 4,000 words, and with romance, if it's over 80,000 words, they're happy with that, just because they got more out of it.
That's oddly enough, that's one of the other things I have written. I actually wrote a romance, which I haven't tried to publish yet, and I wrote it. I was very pleased with it. It was called Aftonhouse. It's now called Spiral Wood.
That sounds charming.
Thank you. It's the name of the place. And I finished it, and it was 50,000 words.
Yep.
And I was like, I can't. Romance has got to be 80,000. So I started, and I added, I made it up to 80,000 words. And actually, I got shortlisted for the Romance Writers in Australia.
Oh, wow.
But I read it again, and I was like, this is awful. Because these extra 30,000 words are exactly what they seem to be, they're extra 30. So I took them out again. And now I probably won't be able to sell it. I'll probably have to bring it out myself, because it's not long enough. But it's better.
Yeah.
You know, so the other thing is, set yourself parameters. But if you write 80,000 words and you realise it shouldn't be 80,000 words, then don't try and sell it. Cut it back down to what it should be.
It's like a fart. If you have to force it, it's probably shit.
Oh! True writers and editors. What's the theme behind that, I wonder?
Now, I think one of the things I underwrite a lot, and it brings me the utmost joy that my editor is like, okay, this needs more fleshing out. I need to see more in this and more in that and more in that. Because I can do it when prompted. But for me, the story flowing naturally is just like, okay, it's done. And one word, that's all you need. Goodbye, let's move on. So I think whatever your style is, you find ways to trim that and find that natural growth and pattern within it. It's like a plant. Not everyone's the same plant. Some people are ivy, grass, oak, whatever it is, and that's your writing style. You just have to go and nurture it exactly as you are.
Yes.
What were the themes in your romance? I'm really curious about what kind of romance you wrote.
One of the things I do in the book is actually, there's a list, I have a chapter of things that a great importance are placed upon, but I don't think are particularly important. And one of them is themes.
Yes.
And it's like, no, forget it.
The only reason...
You write your book, and then once you've finished it, look at it, and you'll see the theme, it'll be there.
Yes.
And I actually did that. Somebody challenged me, and I went through all my books and I looked at it. I was like, I have the same theme in every book. It's always got a character who's emotionally stunted and a bunch of people who are trapped. I was like, God, that's terrible life.
You find patterns.
And Spiral Wood is kind of... is there a theme of being trapped in it? Yeah, there is actually.
Even your romance.
It's basically about a woman who, she comes from Australia to Scotland, and she meets up with this guy called Spiral Wood, who's a conman.
Yep.
And he ropes her into his schemes, and they pull off coins together, and then one day he just vanishes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And she goes looking for him, and she feels he's in a place called, I won't get it right, but she's in a place called Aftonhouse in the Highlands, where there's actually a place called Spiral Wood.
Yeah.
And up there she meets a hunky Highlander who's taking brooding to manly heights, and the usual stuff. There's an artist and a sculptor, all that stuff, the typical romance.
You're looking through the feminine gaze of this man, it's beautiful.
And this is what I mean, so that she goes up, she meets him, she's searching for Spiral Wood, she's met this guy, she realises she loves both of them.
Oh no.
And then suddenly she gets mixed up in a murder mystery where the local smuggler's been killed, and the local shopkeeper thinks he was murdered, so she investigates it because she's posing as a reporter.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. That wasn't supposed to go there.
No.
But it does.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got a crime element in it. So I won't give away the ending or what she ends up with. And the theme, I guess, is that Spiral Wood himself is trapped. He's trapped in the kind of person he is. He's made a promise that he cannot break, so he's trapped by that, even though he's disappearing out of the life of the woman he genuinely loves. And he's trapped in this. Yeah, he's trapped in this cycle that he knows he's never going to be able to break.
Yeah.
And he's not going to get the girl in the end. Oh. But I did want to do different things because he's a con man. He's callous. He's emotionally stunted. He kills someone in it.
Yeah.
Not in a sort of self-defense way. He just kills somebody. And in normal romances, he would be the bad guy.
Yeah.
But he's not. He's immensely likeable, and he's actually there are.
He's the anti-hero.
He's not even that. There are two good guys, and he's one of them.
Okay.
And she has to choose between them, but they're just different. He's not bad. He cannot help. He's just a sad person.
Yeah.
Not bad.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think the good-bad dichotomy is slowly fading. It's fading with age. And I think that a lot of people, this especially happened in the early 2000s and in the late 2010s, the anti-hero and the grey bad guy was the bad guy with a reason.
Yes.
And it was a legitimate reason, was very popular. And seeking understanding behind why bad was bad. Because the caricature of an evil villain is, it's not justifiable anymore. It's not realistic.
Fine for Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, well, it feels...
And Mario Brothers. But
yeah. Oh, I really want to know what they thought Bowser's reasoning was. Why is he stealing the princess?
I'll ask.
Oh, I know his son thinks she's his mum.
Well, I don't know.
Interesting situation. He didn't steal the princess in the movie, though. He stole the brother.
I didn't even see the Bob Hoskins version.
Probably shouldn't. Oh, well, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
My absolute pleasure.
This is always such a brilliant talk. And we will see you on the 9th and 10th of June, where you can come and get Jan's new book, as well as any of the other ones that he brings with it.
It's actually the day after my birthday, so if you wish to bring me a
yes.
present, that's fine too.
Bring him a present. You've got to bring him a present by buying his book.
Yeah, that'd be good, yes.
And chocolates.
Yes.
Awesome. Oh no, cake. It has to be cake.
No, I'm on a diet.
Oh, okay.
There's a cake hidden
Sugar-free
here in
cake.
Kansas. It's just
Sugar-free cake. All right. We will see you all in June. Have a good one, everyone, and make sure you get your tickets early. All right. Bye.
Bye.